how do I respond to the investigator? How we respond is probably going to depend to some extent on what type of investigator contacted the doctor. If it's a criminal investigator with the university police department, then we're probably going to know there's more to this case than just simply sexual harassment. It may include a sexual assault. It may include some sort of criminal behavior, or at least an allegation of criminal behavior. So we have to be aware of that, and we have to take that into consideration. But truthfully, anytime you have a case like that, even if it's just an allegation of sexual harassment, you know that there's at least the potential for some sort of criminal investigation anyway. So we're not going to ignore that possibility, even if the investigator is an internal investigator at the university, say someone who works in the Title IX office. But when my client asked that question in the beginning, my response is generally going to be that you need to engage an attorney to help you deal with that. There are times when there's tremendous pressure on professionals to certainly give answers in a case. It's not just like a straight criminal case where a person has the right not to speak. Certainly an employee at the university has the right not to speak to an investigator, not to participate in an investigation. At the same time, the medical board in our scenario may get involved and certainly have a right not to speak to them. The problem is, if it's an internal investigation at the university, you can lose your job by not participating. They're going to do their investigation. They're going to have a hearing, and they're going to do it without your participation, which could be fatal to your career. At the same time, in a disciplinary process with the medical board, not responding is really not an option. You're obligated to respond. That doesn't mean you can't take the fifth if there's a criminal allegation. But again, you have to weigh your career and your license against your need to protect yourself in a criminal setting. There are times when you have to do that. But in general, in this scenario where it's a sexual harassment charge or something, then the person is ultimately probably going to be interviewed. And that's why it's so critical in the beginning not to submit to an interview without the assistance of counsel. Remember, when that investigator calls, it's very likely, especially if the allegation arises from some interaction years before, that the person I'm talking to may not even remember the period of time. They may need to be have their recollection refreshed based on what they were working on at the time. They don't know the specifics of the allegation. You don't want to say or do anything that's going to put you in a vulnerable position. A lot of times people are inclined to want to talk quickly, and it's easy to make mistakes. It's easy to make mistakes about timing. It's easy to make mistakes about the specifics. Even well-meaning, truthful people make mistakes. So we generally have a rule of thumb is that you can always talk later, and you may have an obligation to do that at some point, but you can't take back what you say today. So if you respond immediately to an investigator who just calls you out of the blue, the chances of making a fatal or critical mistake are pretty high. So we always want to balance speaking now versus speaking after we've investigated the case, after we've looked back at documents, and after we've sat down with someone and talked about how we might want to respond to this investigation. It's really detrimental to a defense to give answers before you're fully informed about what the allegations are and before you've conducted your own investigation. Most investigators want to talk to someone before they get a lawyer, because keep in mind, investigators have a job to do. That doesn't mean they're unethical. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. They could be perfectly well-meaning. But their job is not to protect the person they're interviewing. And their job is to gather as much information as possible. And most investigators, before they want to talk to a person, are going to know a lot more about the situation and the accusation than the person they're talking to. So it puts a person in a natural disadvantage. and natural disadvantage with a natural adversary. I mean, the investigator is often a natural adversary. So speaking to that person prior to being fully informed and fully prepared puts them at a huge disadvantage and is a bad idea. But yes, it happens all the time. And it doesn't just happen with people on the street or people who are unsophisticated. It happens with licensed professionals. It happens with business people and scientists. Our instinct is to speak to authority, is to cooperate with authority. And you're not being uncooperative by asking to take a little time and get professional guidance. And that's what an attorney does, is provide professional guidance. And when you do answer, they want to prepare you to confront the allegations, to answer based on their own investigation, and to answer the questions truthfully and thoroughly and completely.